Welcome everyone to another video. In today's video, we're going to learn how to use LinkedIn Sales Navigator to generate leads for your business. Why would you want to do this? So you could get more customers, make more money, and maybe save on some of the other things you're doing, whether it's ads or content or both. All right, so let's go. Hey, my name is AJ Rivera. I run a company called Blink Media Co. Name of this channel. It's probably, you're probably drawing the connection right now. And over the past 15 years, I've kind of run a lot of stuff in the marketing and business development space. We've grown lots of consulting companies to multiple seven figures. I've been the head of corporate organizations. And over the past 2 years, we've helped about 60, 70 people implement LinkedIn business development systems. And why am I telling you all that? So that you know when you're getting this counsel and when everything I'm about to show you is not some idea, it's not something I learned on some course, it's something I'm actually doing right now. I've had to do it for my business and I do it for other people's businesses. They pay me money to do it, so I hope I do a medium to good job at doing that. Okay, I even had the pleasure of speaking at a couple conferences about how we utilize LinkedIn Sales Navigator to help grow businesses. And the great thing is that it's going to work whether you're, a brand new business with a very low budget or whether you're a large enterprise who has a totally untapped field or an untapped well, as it were, of potential business opportunities and sales. Okay, so do we have you convinced? Are you convinced? Are you motivated? Are you like, all right, fine, I believe you now. That's why I clicked on the video, bro. Just get to it. So let's get into how we can use LinkedIn Sales Navigator to generate leads for your business. So why LinkedIn Sales Navigator? Well, one, it's one of the cheapest places you can generate leads, B2B leads specifically for your businesses. There's over 1 billion leads on LinkedIn. 1 billion people use that platform. 30% of all adults use LinkedIn all the time, every day. 10 million of those leads are business owners, and that's not even to count people who are C-suite, CEO, CMO, executive director. So you have a nice, high quality well of potential sales opportunities. But the last reason why I encourage people to use LinkedIn Sales Navigator is because it's built for business. I think a lot of people, especially if you're maybe in the consulting space or the coaching space or the B2B services space, they try to use things like Facebook or Instagram or TikTok to generate leads. But the problem with those platforms, albeit that they're great, is that they're not necessarily built for business. They're built for being social, right? They're social media platforms. They're built to help you, make more friends, show pictures of your niece's recital, show off your new cat, let everybody know you got engaged finally, right? So those are kind of what those platforms are for, to be funny, right? They're there to be funny, to help you connect with people. They're less for business, where LinkedIn is specifically made for people who are looking for other business owners, whether it's people needing jobs, whether it's people looking for services, or whether it's people doing joint ventures together. So I'm a very big proponent of LinkedIn, and it's weird because I didn't actually start my marketing career in the LinkedIn world. I spent a lot of my time on paid ads and stuff like that, and I didn't even know about this secret amazing place you could go to get a lot of business opportunities and sales opportunities. And so LinkedIn is kind of the biggest bang for your buck when it comes to trying to generate sales opportunities for your business. And it's built for business. So you don't have to I don't know. I think there's a lot of people in the B2B or especially in coaching and consulting space that are DMing people on Instagram and Facebook and stuff, and trying all with the purpose of generating more sales. And that can be off-putting, right? You can get people who get pissed off to you about that because you kind of are tricking them, right? That's let's be real, or at least you're looking, it's not 100% genuine, right? You're reaching out to them for the purposes of generating business when they thought you really liked that cat photo you posted, right? And with LinkedIn is made for business. So if you go up to somebody and say, hey, I'm a video editor and I offer video editing services to restaurants, and they're a restaurant owner, well, then that's totally fine for you to kind of like just approach with that attitude, because that's what LinkedIn is for. So that's kind of my favorite thing about LinkedIn, is that it allows you to have more of these type sales types conversations without it feeling weird or out of place. Okay, so those are all the whys on LinkedIn. Let's get into how to actually do that, and how to actually do that, I'm gonna share my screen. All right, so when you log in to LinkedIn, the first thing you're going to want to do is click over here where it says Sales Navigator, right? Now, if you don't have this button, it's because you probably don't have Sales Navigator, which means you're going to want to click this little waffle guy over here, and you're going to be able to click Sell with LinkedIn, and it should take you to a page to sign up for it. Now, Sales Navigator is not free, but it is very inexpensive in comparison to a lot of the other B2B like prospecting tools. So the one I always think of is there's a tool called Zoom Info, which has maybe more data points, but not as many leads as LinkedIn Sales Navigator. And it starts in like the 5 figures to access. While LinkedIn Sales Navigator is only around $99 per month, and you can cancel anytime. And most of the time you can get a 30-day like free trial. So if you're watching this video, you're like, shit, I thought this was going to be free. Just go get the free trial version and try it for a month. And then if it's worth it, keep it. And if you're like, oh, everything this guy said in the video worked, I'm generating more sales opportunities, it's worth it. But, we generate at least 100 leads from a LinkedIn Sales Navigator account every month. So for us, that's like $1 per lead. So it's a pretty good deal for us. So, but you make your own decision. And a lot of these practices can be implemented without Sales Navigator, but I highly, highly recommend you get it. Okay, so then when you log into Sales Navigator, it's going to take you to a page that looks like this. Now, yours is going to look less active, because you probably just set it up. But when you're setting up your LinkedIn Sales Navigator, where you're typically going to start is you're going to start by building searches of potential sales opportunities. So what I tell most people, unless you're like an enterprise level business who is like doing what is called account-based marketing, which we can cover in another video if you care about that, you're going to click right here where it says lead filters, because you're just trying to generate leads. My presumption is if you're watching this, you're a smaller company or a go-to-market, and you're just trying to get more people to buy your stuff. Okay, so it should take you to a page that looks like this or similar to this. As sometimes these things update, but it should be pretty close. Okay. All right, now there's a few categories that you're going to want to really pay attention to. There's a lot of functionality here in the LinkedIn Sales Navigator, and it can feel overwhelming, I think, for some people. I think that's why a lot of people don't realize what a good tool it is they see this and they're like, oh shit, this is too many. This is too many. I'm going to go back to just like, begging my friends who swore they would do business with me instead of trying to figure something else out. But I want to kind of show you the like 4 or 5 most important ones, so that you don't have to spend a whole bunch of time back here and get lost and then in your mind think it doesn't work, right? It's like trying to drive a car and you forgot to shift it into drive, right? Let's show you how the basics, right? Move the mirrors, the whole thing. Okay, so the first thing I want to go over is geography. So geography allows you to target people based on, you guessed it, where they are geographically on the planet. Okay, so if you are looking if you own a local business and you only work locally with people, then you would obviously pick someplace local to you. So an example might be I live in Chicago, or right outside of it, Illinois. And so I might include Illinois as a place that I'm going to target. And you can see over on the right, LinkedIn starts hanging out and being like, oh, look, we have 6 million people in Illinois, which is great, but we probably want to get more specific than that. Now, a lot of business owners that I talk to and that I work with, they'll tell me something along the lines of like, well, AJ, I work with anybody all over the US, or I work with anybody all over the US and Canada and UK and Australia. And if that's the case, super cool. Add them into your targeting. But what I might tell you is if you have 6 million results and you don't want to go through one by one for 6 million, maybe pick one area to focus on at a time. That's typically what I'll advise for myself and my clients, is that pick a, like even me, right? Like I live in the US and I'm not targeting the entire US. If you live in, especially like Canada or or the US, where they're pretty large populations, don't try to just target the entire country. But the same goes for the UK or Australia as well, which maybe don't have the same population, but still have a lot of people. All right, so pick a spot and start there to target. Typically, I'd say start wherever you live, even if you operate with people all over the world. Okay, so that's number one. The next thing you're going to want to target is by company headcount. Now, what does company headcount mean? That just means how many employees the company says they have. Now, remember that it's what people are self-reporting a lot of the time. So if you're like, well, I work with small business owners, and you may, and that's great. Some people who have basically no employees, for instance, might identify as a company that has some employees, but like 1 to 10, right? But those 1 to 10 may be their mom, dad, and sister. And so if your whole business offering is, I help teams become more connected, right? Let's say you're a consultant for morale. Well, this might not be the ideal person for you. Now, if you're like, hey, I am a video editor for small businesses who can't, afford a huge production studio and they're bad at making videos themselves, this might be a great one. So you can go everything from self-employed all the way to enterprise. For them, their enterprise ends at around 10,000. The way I would categorize this is if you're working with small businesses, you'd maybe do self-employed, 1 to 10, 11 to 50, and 50 to 200 at the top. That is a small business owner, typically how we internally define it. Now, everybody kind of has a different definition of a small business owner, and what is small, what is mid-market, what is enterprise. These are the ones I use, and I find it pretty helpful for our team and our clients. So take that as you will. But anything like this is typically can be a small business. This can be anything from a restaurant to a construction company to a small consulting group to a church, right? Like these are all relatively small type businesses. So if you're looking for small businesses, you'd put your headcount there. If you're looking for mid-market, I might put those at the 200 to maybe 1,000 at the high level. In terms of people who are bigger, they're established, but maybe they still aren't like Apple, right? They still aren't the big dogs in the world. They're not like one of the companies secretly running the world. So those would be the mid-market ones. And for me, enterprise would start at around 5,000 and higher. And that's not perfect, but that is close enough to get you where you want to go. So I'm going to stick with the small business example for our purposes. And I'm actually going to get rid of people who identify as self-employed for myself. Because for me, sometimes people who identify as self-employed are people who are trying to start a business and don't already have one. All right, next, this one's going to be pretty quick, is you're going to look at connection level. Now, what is this connection level? So on LinkedIn, they have what are called connections. That's their version of followers or friends or whatever, like on the other platforms, or subscriptions, those are connections, right? And so those are people you're directly connected to. Now, if you're starting out on LinkedIn, you might not have a lot of connections. You might have only a few. And so you may have to omit this step while you're starting. But as your network starts to build, even if your network had like 30 people in it, I would strongly recommend using connections as the first path in, because you're going to get a higher positive response rate. So for me, there are obviously first degree connections are anybody you're connected with. Typically, if you're building like a leads list and you've never really utilized LinkedIn and you're like, I have a lot of people I know in my network who could benefit from my services, then you might want to use the first degree connections, right? Because this would be anybody who falls within your other categories, and the categories we're honing in, that you're already connected to that you could potentially reach out to. Now, if you're here and you're like, AJ, I've already exhausted those. That's the whole reason I'm here. I need new leads. I don't need old leads. Then you would skip that and go to at least a second degree connection. Now, second degree connections are going to pull anybody who is essentially a friend of a friend. right? So they're 1 degree away from being connected to you, though they may not like have had any sort of direct connection to you. So this is kind of the best place because it's the same as like meet my friend Timmy here. I swear he's a cool guy. And you're like, well, if you say Timmy's cool, I guess I trust you, right? Like I'll believe Timmy's cool. So this is typically where we would advise most people start when it comes to their lead sourcing. Now, if you're unable to get enough volume with this, with second degree connections, especially if you're just starting. You could see my volume's still at 250,000. I would make the case it's too large. But you could always add what is called third degree connections, which are people who are even further away but have some sort of connection to you. That would be if a second degree is a friend of a friend, a third degree is a friend of a friend of a friend. Cool? Does that make sense? Are you with me? Did you click away? Don't click away. This is the good. All right. So typically second degree connections is where I would start. And that will start honing this audience down. And we probably want this to a couple hundred leads, at most to maybe 1,000 if you are using tools and software. All right. So we've got our geography. We've got the company side. We've got our connection on. The next thing we want to look at is industry. When it comes to industry, you want to think about what industries of business you work with. So you might work with only people in the construction vertical. You might only work with realtors. You might only work with attorneys and lawyers. You may only work with marketing agencies. And I use those examples because those are all different verticals under industry that you can target, whether it's construction, right? Whether it's real estate, whether it's law, right? Legal, right? You're going to be able to find it. And remember that these are the names of industries and not the names of job titles, which we'll get into in a minute. But the names of these industries are going to help you find the right potential people as you continue to keep prospecting and looking for leads for your business. Okay. So for my purposes, I work with a lot of B2B service providers, consultants. So I'm going to put consultants. So you can see business consulting is in here, IT consulting is in here, outsourcing consulting is in here, and operations consulting. Now for us, I'm going to just pick business consulting for right now, but that's just one example. And you could potentially bundle multiple industries if you know going after multiple industries makes sense, right? For instance, maybe, chiropractors and physical therapists might be a vertical you work with. And now you can see we've narrowed this down to 13,000. Great. This is almost a manageable amount of leads. Alrighty. And then the last thing you want to look at here for almost every campaign would be the job title. Now these are under the section of role. And there's a lot of ways to go after specific job titles. And if you're in a more nuanced industry, you might use them. But 99 times out of 100, we're going to just look for the job title of people we could potentially work with. So if you work with business owners, you can literally just look up owner, right? And now you have owner in here. Now, if you saw when I typed in owner, co-owner popped up. Now, co-owner is the same as owner in terms of LinkedIn search, meaning if I include this, it shouldn't really add too many more leads. It should kind of be about the same. And you can see it barely changed, right? So I typically don't add things like co or vice or anything unless I need to specifically only get those people in here, okay? So we have our owner in here. Another thing to think about is when you're targeting job titles is that just because somebody does one function at their job, they may identify as something differently. So if you look at my LinkedIn, I am an owner, but I identify myself as a CMO, right? I know a lot of owners who are like, I'm a founder, or I'm a partner, or I'm a president of this company. And so thinking about those things, you want to make sure you're including those wildly different naming conventions for the same title. So when I'm looking for people who are business owners, I will typically target owners, presidents, CEOs, right? A lot of people identify as CEOs. Founder, maybe I would do partner, right? But I think in this instance, I'm not going to. But owner, president, CEO, founder. Boom. There you go. And now you can see we've narrowed this down to 2,500, a much more manageable amount. By the way, if you're using some form of automation tools or anything like that, typically the max number you can add into one of those tools is around 2,500. And I know because we use it for like all of our clients. But if you're doing this manually and you're just like, hey, I'm just starting, I don't want to use tools. I got to do it the hard way first. Totally cool. So we're gonna narrow this down even more. But that is a current job title. And if you work with bigger companies, maybe you work with marketing leaders, maybe you work with COOs, maybe you work with operations managers, right? Maybe those are other decision makers you may go after. Just remember, sometimes they identify as managers, directors, or C-suite, and they often do the same thing, especially when you're talking about smaller businesses. So find the job title of the person you're going after and target them this way. Okay. All right. So now that we have this, the last thing I would tell you is if you're doing this, let's say the old school way, like you're manually doing all this lead generation. You're not using any sort of tools, any sort of automation, any sort of AIs that can help you. Totally great, by the way. That's fine. The last thing I might do is click this little toggle that says posted on LinkedIn on, right? And so when you click this, what it's going to do is it's going to pull only leads who have been active on LinkedIn. And so these people actually check their LinkedIn. And so the benefit to go ahead. So when you're looking at people who are on LinkedIn, you want to look at people who posted on LinkedIn. These are going to be people who are most likely the most active. The only time I would say potentially turn this toggle off is one, if you do some sort of LinkedIn or business development or sales services. It's actually kind of the opposite, like for my industry, right? Where we're helping people use LinkedIn and email to generate leads. When we target people who post on LinkedIn, we get a lot of Ron Swansons, right? And what I mean by that is, I don't remember if you know that like Ron Swanson meme where he's like, he's in the hardware store and somebody asks, do you need help? And he goes, I know more than you. That's kind of the vibe we get when we target people who post on LinkedIn. So, but if you're somebody who works in an industry that isn't LinkedIn consulting or something like that, I would turn this on with the purposes of generating sales opportunity from somebody who is actually utilized LinkedIn in the past month or so. For example, if you're like a content marketing agency, and so you want people who are trying to post, but maybe have not had the highest success rate, this is a good little toggle for you, okay? So for our purposes, I'm going to leave this on, but just know if you're if you do LinkedIn coaching or something like that, I would turn this off if I was you. But follow your heart, but know your heart's wrong. It's incorrect. I would say turn this off. Okay, so now that we've done all this, you can see we have this list of around 800 people. Cool, we did it, right? But is there anything else that we need to watch out for? And my answer is yes. Okay, so now that you've built your audience, the last thing we want to do here is start to what we call refine it a little bit. So as we go through this audience, we can see we have around 800 leads who identify as owners of consulting services in Illinois who are small businesses who are one friend away. Great, that's what we want. 800 people. Now we'd want to go through here and start clicking through these people and ensuring, are these the right verticals of potential clients, right? So this first one is a consultant. I might click through, look at it a little bit, best-selling, business strategy. Yeah, we can help them. Next, this person, right? Commercial loan consultant. Okay, fine. We could probably help them. The next one has a great name. AJ, white label services. Okay. And let's say we keep going here, and it might take a minute. And let's say we get to a vertical that doesn't really make sense. So here's an example that may or may not work, right? So I'm looking at this, and I'm like, oh, here's somebody in the waste and recycling industry. I'm not certain, like, I'm pretty sure we can't really help anybody in the waste and recycling industry. That's not something that our services super help. And if you're like, well, I don't want this person in my leads list, you would create what we call exclusions. Exclusions are exactly what you think they are. They just omit a certain name or word or whatever it is. So, for us, you're probably going to want to take a note of, okay, anybody who says they're in the waste and recycling news or whatever, that's somebody that we're going to want to omit. And we can use what are called Boolean searches to exclude that person. And so let's get into Boolean searches right now so that you know how to actually do that. All right, so Boolean searches. So Boolean searches are basically you using this little search bar up here to narrow in on your potential sales opportunities. All right, when it comes to Boolean searches, there's kind of two ways to throw stuff up here. You can throw them quoted or non-quoted. So the difference between quoted and non-quoted keywords is that quote means it has to be exactly as it says here. So if I put the word consultant, it will only find people who identify as consultant in the search. If they identify as consulting, if they identify as a mentor, an advisor, it will omit all of them, even if they're in that vertical. So that's something to think about. Now, if you want to go after that industry at large, you would just search it unquoted, and now it'll find somebody who is in a loosely related to consultant without it having to be a word for word exact. So if I hit search here with it unquoted, we should see the search increase a little bit. It looks like it didn't, which is something important to pay attention to, because if you're looking for leads like this, quoting it is going to be word for word. If you don't quote it, it's still going to kind of try to find people, and we can see it does still help you find the right people. But if you're misspelling something, right? So if I spell it consulting, right, and we spelled it consultung by accident, I still find these people. Where if I put it in quotes, we're probably going to see this drop, to zero, right? Because there's nobody who has misspelled consulting in their title. So you can kind of see the difference is if you quote, it's going to go exactly verbatim, and if you don't quote, it's going to try to get the general vibe of what you're saying. Okay, so those are the main difference. 9 times out of 10, you're going to be using quoted. But if you're just kind of looking around for people, that's when you would maybe use it unquoted. So I'm going to use the example of this guy, and maybe we blur his name but keep his details. But I'm going to use the example of this guy as somebody who we might want to exclude from our search. All right, so when you're using Boolean searches, there's kind of 3 different naming conventions you want to think about. Now, we're going to start with this. There's the and, there's or, and there's not. I'm going to start with the not so that you know how to do the exclusion, and then I'll get into the and the or options as well. Okay, so for the not. So let's say for this person, we'll pretend they're Timmy Turner, right? Maybe we'll put his face there, that person's face there, so we're not actually putting their stuff on blast. We're going to grab a copy paste straight from their profile that would be pretty specific to this, anybody who's like this person. So for me, anybody who's really in waste and recycling, I can't really help, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the word not in all caps, okay? Then I'm going to put quotes. I'm going to paste waste and recycling, end quote. Then I'm going to hit enter, okay? And what that should do is get rid of Timmy Turner, which it did. And now Timmy Turner is no longer in our search. We just have all these other people that we had before, but we've removed that person. So anytime you're starting to what we call build exclusions and refine audiences, you're going to want to add not with the quotes on top of there and making sure that you are taking something very detailed of that person that would apply only to people similar to that, but not to people who would still be good leads. Okay, so that is how you use the not naming convention. The next naming convention you would use is what is called the and naming convention. So let's say I wanted to only work with people who identify as consultants, and they are owners, for example. What this would do is refine my search even more to people who only have the word consultant and owner on their LinkedIn. Now, why would I do this? I would do this for a couple reasons. If I found that my search over here using the pre-built-in LinkedIn filters wasn't getting specific enough, like you were getting owners of, I don't know, dentist businesses, and you're like, I don't know why they're coming up in here. I don't know why LinkedIn has them categorized as a consultant. They're a dentist. It's a separate thing. Then you would add things up here so that you could find them more specifically. Maybe you only want to work with people who identify as owners and presidents. And so that would be another reason why you would put the and up there. Another reason might be, especially if you're in like a coaching or life coaching space or something like that, is you only work with, let's say, men, or you only work with women. You might throw the top 200 most popular male names or female names up here as a way to narrow down your audience and make it more men or more women or whoever you work with. Okay, so that's what the and naming convention is. It could also be the companies they've worked at, tools they use, whatever. But most of the time, you're using it to find a title or a industry word that is not pre-built within the LinkedIn search. Because like while they have a lot, sometimes they're missing some verticals or they're missing how people self-identify, but you can still target them by going up here. All right, and then the last Boolean search naming convention tool you need to know about is what's called the or, right? So or is if you want somebody who is either or. So like if we're taking that same example, right? President and owner is what we were searching before. Those are people who need to identify as both. You could see how it drastically cut down my lead. Now, maybe I'm okay with anybody who identifies as a president or an owner. That's when I would use the capital OR and then put owner. And we should see this audience increase in size because now it's not they have to be both. Now it's an either or situation. And you could see drastically increase the size and didn't really cut it down too much more than when we didn't have this at all. Okay, so that is how you would use the or naming convention. There are situations where you might combine all three of these things. So you would say president or owner, not waste and recycling, right? Is what we decided. We decided we hate recycling, right? Okay. And then you would put and consulting, right? So you might do this to super refine your audience so that you're only getting people who are very, very, very specific. As you can see, this didn't cut it down too much because these are pre-built in LinkedIn. So it's good to know that they're decently accurate, but we can still make them more and more specific, okay? And this is great if in the event you cannot find them over here in LinkedIn again. So that's when you would kind of use the Boolean is if the whatever you're trying to get rid of or add is not already included in LinkedIn. All right, and then the last hack I might tell you about is to, when you're looking for like men and women, I know I had briefly mentioned that, and there's like a lot of like life coaches or whatever, fitness coaches, some people, all that kind of stuff, right? And you only work with men or you only work with women. One of the tools I'll utilize is ChatGPT, and you can go into it. Let me pull it up for you really quick. And you can go in here and you could say, give me the top 200 most popular male names in the United States with quotes around each name, right? And what it'll do is it'll start thinking and it'll start creating the names for you. Now, this is beneficial if you're somebody who's like, I only want to work with men, or I happen to know that only men or only women are the ones who respond to me. Like I said, this is more in that like life coaching space or fitness coaching space where you have a specialty. Maybe if you own a women's, I don't know, birthing center, you would target mostly women, of course, right? So like you might use something for that. And you could take these names and upload them as a Boolean search here, and it'll help cut down that audience so that you only have men or you only have women. And you can even ask ChatGPT here to put, hey, can you add the words and in between each name and get rid of the numbers? And then you can literally just copy and paste it in here. This thing will go for a long, long time. It'll make a really long Boolean search, but you can target those people, and that'll help narrow it in. So that's like a little hack that we've done for people who are looking for, just men or just women for whatever reasons. Alrighty, so that is it. I know that was probably a lot, huh? So that is your entire speed run cheat sheet version of how to use LinkedIn Sales Navigator to generate leads for your business. If you're especially, a business consultant, a service provider, a coach, something like that, this is the exact stuff we're using right now to start generating leads, to generate leads for clients, to generate it for ourselves. So I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, let me know below. If you have any specific questions about anything in the video you want me to clarify, please let me know. I would like to do that. And if you made it all the way to this part of the video, wow, thank you so much, Mom. I really appreciate you watching my videos. It means everything. And I pray that this is helpful for you. Subscribe if you want more videos. I'm going to be doing these once or twice a week or something like that. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye.